childhood recollection?
Earliest.
Earliest childhood recollection.
Oh.
Or one of them.
Can you remember one? The earliest one.
Kidding.
It's too hard of a question,
What about
Robin.
that dog?
What do you remember about your mother and your father?
What do I remember? Let's see. Well, one thing I remember about my father was, well, in the first place, the house we lived in down on Northwest was, in those days, they all had basements, but the water table in that area was such that almost every year the basement got a couple of feet of water in. So I guess they realized that when they were going to build the house, and they built the basements with about 4 foot wide shelves up about 4 or 5 feet. So the floor joist would be here, about 3 feet lower would be this 4 foot ledge all the way around, and then you drop down 4 feet and you'd have the base.
It was concrete, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Wasn't it dirt?
So one of the first things I remember is that my mother used to put her fruit jars up on that ledge around, and then my father would move them out a little bit and store his empty snuff cans.
I heard he put his drinks under the bed.
Well, that's I never knew that.
Who told us that?
Somebody told
Somebody
you
just
that.
told us that.
Clyde.
He didn't. I never saw him drinking anything. But I know he used to have a bottle of whiskey that he would open the snuff can up and pour a little of the whiskey in to make it moist, and then carry it in his pocket. And whenever he wanted, he'd open up and take it out and put it in.
Got a cancer of the mouth.
Well, construction people even now do it, but they did it more in those days just because it keeps their mouth moist and they don't have to drink a lot of water. So that's one of the first things I remember.
I have a question. What did you have for Sunday dinners?
Huh?
What did you have for Sunday dinner?
Sunday dinner?
Uh-huh.
Oh, usually a leg of lamb with Yorkshire pudding. And the Yorkshire pudding, I've read on the internet you make it separately, but we never did. She just cooked the roast, and then when it was done and she wanted to make the Yorkshire pudding, she just poured it around the roast. And
Tony can make a good.
huh?
Tony can make that.
Tony? Yeah.
So she'd leave the roast in, she'd take the roast out and then put the Yorkshire in.
We want you in the pictures.
She'd just pour the Yorkshire around the roast.
Around the roast.
Because Mom always took the roast out, put it on a plate, and Mom would just sat there, and then she'd pour the
Yeah,
Yorkshire
well,
in.
I think that way it puts more of the beef gravy into the Yorkshire pudding. Gives it more of a flavor. The Yorkshire pudding I've eaten that wasn't cooked around the roast is very bland. But the Yorkshire pudding that my mother used to have had a beef flavor to it. So
Chick,
there's that little difference.
what did your dad do for a living?
He was a shovel operator. The first thing I know, he helped excavate the state capitol building. those days, the prime method of moving material was with horse-drawn sleds that they used to slide the material away on. Well, and wagons too. The way they dug it was, in those days, they didn't have diesel engines. They had steam boiler engines, and I tried to find a picture, but I couldn't, and Blaine did, and then I started looking, so I saw it once, and Blaine showed it to me, and I can't find it. But they're a big machine with a steam boiler in. The operator operates the machinery in the front, and then there's a man, his helper, who is called an oiler, I guess.
We found it.
They're not on wheels, they're on treads, just like a cat, a V8 cat now.
Okay, it's right here. We have the original. And I'm gonna pass this around. There are a bunch of sheets of pictures here, just photocopied. And if you want any of these pictures, just write your name by the picture, or by the number of the picture. And we'll email it to you. Okay?
You gonna pin me?
So, there are pens here available, but I'll send this around. And this is actually the steam shovel that George Washington used. And tell the story about hiding in the shovel.
Oh, well, when we were boys, he was employed with the company that was building roads through Yellowstone Park one year, I know, and another year through Logan Canyon over to Bear Lake. So when we weren't in school, they raised some way so that we could live up in the canyon where he was working. They had a Boy Scout camp up in Logan called Ponds. We stayed up there all one summer, and then we stayed up at Yellowstone another summer. We lived in a big tent, and I guess we ran wild all summer in both places. I remember we used to catch fish, and I remember one time George caught a fish and went hollering up to my mother, "I got him in the eye, I got him in the eye." And she thought one of the kids had a hook in his eye and went scrambling out. And it was the fish that had the hook in the eye. We had, we would wear shorts and canvas shoes. Keds, they called them in those days. We would wade out in the creek up to our knees and fish that way.
Here's a photo of them as boys in front of the tent. All four of the boys. So we'll pass that around and you can see that. We can also digitize that and send it to you. I haven't numbered that one though, but
Well, they were quite comfortable. You had a big stove in the middle of the night. When it got cool, you'd have to stack the wood in the stove, and it was, well, really nice, I thought. Anyway, we had a lot of fun up there.
tell the story about your dad, how he positioned the steam shovel so when they were blasting,
Oh, yeah,
you
well,
could be up close.
as they dug the road, they would come into these big rock part of the canyon wall they'd have to get rid of. In those days, they'd blast it out with dynamite. What what they'd do is they would work around that all day, and then right before quitting time, they would move the shovel back. The shovel in those days, it wasn't a backhoe, it would shovel this way and go and dump it. So he, whenever they got ready to blast, he'd turn the machine around so that the bucket was behind the shovel, and the rocks and things would fly over, but they wouldn't get into the bucket. And we would get in the bucket and crouch down, and they'd blast, and we'd hear the rocks sailing over us and come banging down around. We thought it was a lot of fun. The other thing we did with that machine, they had the boiler in it is a horizontal tube where the water got hot and steamed and collected, and so it was always really hot. Well, a couple of feet above the boiler, they put some 2x12s, about what they were, and we'd go out and we'd spend all the time we wanted in the creek and get cold and shivery, and we'd climb up in there on the boards above the steam and lie there while he was working and get warm again. But the only thing bad about that was it make you a little dizzy, because it'd swing around and back, swing around and back, and swing around. But other than that, it was kind of fun too. But you know, when you're 8, 9, 10 years old, all of that is frosting on the cake. You really enjoyed it. We did anyway. George and I in particular, I guess.
Chick, how old were you and your brothers when your father left, and what did you guys do to make ends meet?
Well, we were about 5 or 6, I guess. The reason he left, he was a union fighter, I guess. In those days, the unions were trying to gain inroad into the various companies, and Standard Oil had I guess they still do, refinery out west of Salt Lake, and at that time, my mother wanted him to take a job with Standard Oil, and but to do that he had to join the union. He wouldn't do that. As it turned out, one of our neighbors down there was a shovel operator too. Well, my father turned the job down, and he left and went to the coast. This guy took the job, and as far as I know, he's still working there. So it was a bad decision that he made. When you're union, you do one thing, when you're non-union, you're against it. When he was down on the coast, he was quite active against the union, so that was his life.
Where did he go on the coast?
Huh?
Where did he go to? Where did he go to on the coast?
Where did he go to?
Yeah,
What
where?
city?
Oh, down in Los Angeles.
Did he want Grandma Ann ever to come join him, or
Huh?
did he ever ask Ann and you boys to come join him, or?
Well, I don't think my mother, I think, said, this is the last time I'm moving. She, George was born in Casper, Wyoming. He worked there for a while. And I was born in Salt Lake. I guess Clyde and Richard were too. But never heard them say much. Never heard my mother say much about my father, good or bad.
What did you guys do to make ends meet after he left?
Hmm?
What did you do make ends meet after you left?
Okay,
What did you do after your father left to make ends meet?
my mother went to work. She was a private stenographer for.
Mine and Smelter.
Hmm?
Mine and Smelter?
Yeah, Mining and Smelter Supply Company.
Yeah, downtown.
I remember that now.
She would say that her husband was a good
See,
dancer. That's all she would say about him, she'd say he was a good dancer.
They have two forms of shorthand, I know. Greg and an older version called Pittman, and my mother used Pittman, and she was evidently very good at it because he kept her with him till the company folded, I believe.
Yeah, he did. Forgot his name. I used to go down. I forgot his name.
I forgot too, but
Was it Dithers or something, or?
I knew it once.
Yeah.
Tony was supposed to come and tell us about Grandma, but she couldn't come. But we wanted her to tell us all about her, what she knew.
Oh,
Yeah,
about the shorthand?
About her, just about her life. 'cause
Oh.
She lived with him, so.
Well, you know-
Well, no, Mom, no, think a lot.
Randy lived with her every weekend. I remember a lot about Grandma. I remember she had, she wore that little apron and she'd have lard in her refrigerator that she would bake with. She had those coconut cookies in her cupboard. And she'd take us to church at Christmas time. She'd call my sister and I both by hand. And we'd get a stocking with the net made out of the net with the orange and the candy. And we were brats. We'd pull and make her like pull on us. So we were hard to take care of, but she would take Randall.
Was this Grandma Seal?
Yeah.
Well, you know,
And then she'd come to our house on Friday night. She'd take the bus and she'd come down and see us on Riviera Drive, remember?
Well, it's the other way around.
Well, no, she would come once in a while and stay at the house. But you went there every Friday, didn't you?
Just about.
And spent the whole weekend there?
Well, I thought that Tony lived there for a while with Grandma.
When Dad was in Japan, she
Uh-huh.
did.
She did.
Well, she did, yeah, when I
Well,
was
no.
born, while he was in Korea, wasn't
To Japan.
A year or two, or,
it? Something like that,
Well, it was about a year.
about a year.
Yeah.
so she would really know her the best.
Yeah, she got along good with her.
Yeah, she knew her.
Pretty good, yeah.
'Cause she had, she had Randy, and so it was like old school and new school on how to take care of the baby, and, sometimes they would have disagreements about that, but.
I heard about those.
Or Mom would move her furniture around and she'd come back and Grandma Ann would move it all back the way it was, stuff like that, but.
We old folks are like that.
well, in those days when I was down in that area, that was something you can't experience anymore. The streets weren't paved. There was no asphalt streets. We used to have a cart come around in the summertime with a big tank on the back, and it had some spray bars out, and they would put the water on the ground to keep the dust down. We used to run behind it and get a sort of a shower. It was a fun thing to do in the summer.
Dad said he used to climb the tree and,
Huh?
Dad said he used to like to get up in a tree and eat grapes and read a book, Tarzan or something.
Well, it's along Ninth West in those days, there was a whole row of trees. We used to think things lived up in the trees, and at night, we'd be at one end of the block and want to get the other. We wouldn't walk. We would run as fast as we could under those trees for fear somebody was going to jump down on us.
didn't your mother's sister live on that same block with you?
Yeah, we lived almost on the end, down near Fifth North, and Elizabeth and the Stevensons were the first house up on south end. Except right on the corner, there was a big vacant lot that the whole neighborhood used for a play area. There were no weeds on it because we were always walking around somewhere on it or playing or doing something. All the marble games and the tops and the run sheepy run and all those things all happened on that corner. And, we played all kinds of fun games like Dicky Dicky Show a Lark, Run Sheepy Run.
How do you play Run Sheepy Run? How do you play that? I don't know it.
Oh, well, you choose up sides, and one side could line up down here, the other side could down here, and then you would mill around, and one person on each side had the choice of saying run sheepy run or nothing. So we'd mill around, and then you'd see a chance to get all your guys down the other end, and you'd say run sheepy run, and everybody'd head for the other end, and the other team would try to snatch you or touch you. If they did, you'd become part of their and then you'd go to the other end, and then you'd do it all over again.
Sounds like Sharks and Minnows.
So were there boundaries?
Yeah, the boundaries were whatever was available. You couldn't get outside of that big square, or you'd be in the street or in somebody else's yard.
And how did you determine a winner?
Well, when you had them all caught.
So when they all were on one team.
All on one team. And then there was the other one, kick the can. You know how to kick the can?
How about
I don't know that one.
Dicky Dicky Cholard?
Huh?
How do you play Dicky Dicky Cholard or whatever that was?
Oh, Dicky Dicky Show a Light. You'd do that at night. And you'd
Show a
have,
light. Oh, okay.
you'd have matches. And that you could hide all over the neighborhood in that, not just a little square. And that's the same way. You'd say, Dicky Dicky Show a Light, and they'd have to show the light. And then everybody would try to catch whoever to show the light. And you wouldn't have to leave the light on, you just have to show it for a moment. And then everybody, and there again, once everybody was caught, the game was over.
So did everybody show a light?
Yeah.
A match?
Mm-hmm.
Did you have teams? It was teams. Maybe.
Oh, they were teams.
Probably.
Yeah, teams.
So they take turns showing a light.
Mm-hmm.
All of that team would light a light.
Yeah, and then if you caught them, they were part of your team.
Okay. And then it was the other team's turn.
Yeah, right.
And was there a home base that was safe or?
Well,
No, everybody just
not
mingled and-
Not exactly. Yeah, you had to get to a certain place before you got caught. If you did, well, then you were safe till the next round.
Okay.
Kick the can was, you just had a little area and you had the can sitting up in it. And you had to play this at night too, so you can't see anybody.
Did you have to go hide first? You all went and hide, and then you'd come in, and the person who was by the can.
Yeah,
Touch you.
then you had somebody who was patrolling around the can, and anybody that could get past him and kick the can was in free.
Yeah.
But if he caught him before they kicked the can, he became part of the patrol around the can.
Did you ever play Andy I Over?
Oh yeah, any eye over. Well, that was that was another one we played mostly at night because
Can you throw the ball over the house?
yeah, but we had there was a guy down in the neighborhood that painted the balls with a radiation type paint, made it visible at night. So we would put it out in the sunshine most of the day so that to get as bright as we could. Then at night we'd choose up sides, and Stevenson's, the ones down next door, had a big barn out in back, and we would choose up sides, and that one you'd have the ball on your side, and you'd say Andy I over and throw the ball. But if it went over, then you had to wait for their response. But if it didn't roll over and start coming back, you'd say, Andy came back, and then you'd say, Andy I over and throw it again. And finally it would go over, and then you would start looking around, because if they caught it over on the other side, then they came around and tried to tag you, so you'd be on their side. And so it was some of them would come around each side, but the only ones that could do it were the ones with the ball, so you don't know which way to run, or whether to run or not to run, or it was kind of a harem-scaring type game.
I played that game before.
Yeah.
That was one of my childhood
My
favorites.
dad used to tell me that you and Grandpa George had to put, he used that you guys, and during the Great Depression, your shoes had holes in the soles of the feet, and so you guys would cut out cardboard every day to put it in the soles of the shoes, so it didn't wear through. That's just something my dad told me. I don't know.
Did you have to put cardboard in your shoes because they had holes in the bottom?
During the Great Depression.
In what?
Your shoes.
Oh, sure. But you got to the point, well, you know, they don't do it anymore, but in those days when your soles got really thin, you could buy a rubber layer that was sticky, and you could put it on the bottom, on the outside. And that'd last for a while, but then as you walk, the front end would become loose. And then pretty soon you'd be going flapping down the street with so eventually when those things wore out, you cut out cardboard inserts and put them on the inside, and then you wore them that way until they wore out. Then you were on your own again. You'd have to buy another rubber outside. They didn't last forever, but almost they did. Yeah, that's something we don't have to experience too often.
What were some of the other hardships you had? What were some of the other hardships you had during the Great Depression?
Well,
Did you have many clothes?
Did you have to pick up coal? Mike said that his dad had to pick up coal that fell off the train.
well, we did that too, yeah. Well, you know, in those days, the boards had Friday night movies in the amusement halls. At least the 29th Ward did, which where we live. And they used to have drawings for different things. And I remember one year we won a half a ton of coal. So that was convenient. I used to help the fellow run the movie machine. The movies came in reels, about 12 reels to a movie. So you'd start out with, you had two machines, and you'd start the movie on the one machine, and then you'd put the second reel on the second machine, and when a little light would pop up in the corner in the first machine, you'd start the second machine and it'd automatically transfer. And then the operator would have to keep the arc light bright. That's how they got the bright picture in those days. I don't know what they do now. And he'd have to watch that. Then his helper would take the reel that was just finished and take it out, put the third reel in, and then rewind the first reel. So the two guys were busy all the time.
What do you remember about your grandparents? Do you have memories of your grandparents?
Hmm?
Do you have memories of your grandparents? What do you
Did I
remember?
what?
Do you remember your grandma and your grandpa? Seal?
The grandfather, no. The grandmother, yeah. I think he was in jail.
He was in jail most of the time because he was a polygamist.
What do you remember about your grandmother?
Wouldn't renounce that.
I remember my grandmother was quite a small lady, and when I remember, she already had white hair, and she had a feather bed in the back of her little house that we liked to climb into. And that was about it.
Can you tell us about serving in World War II?
Hmm?
You served in World War II, didn't you?
I can't hear
Did
you.
you serve in World War II?
Oh, we all did, all four of the boys.
What'd you do?
What did everyone do?
Yeah.
Navy?
The George was
Navy.
Navy.
petty officer in the Navy. He was before he went in the Navy, he worked in a bank, I think. Well, before that, when he graduated from high school, he went into CCC, Civilian Conservation Corps. That was set up to provide employment, if you can call it that, for the young people who couldn't find work otherwise. Let's see, you had to be I think 18, and you earned $21 a month. Actually, about $15 of it went to your home, your parents. The rest went into an account that you had at the camp for miscellaneous and sundry things. You lived in the camp. And the camp was controlled by the military during non-work hours. During the work hours, the camp was under control of the Forest Service. The theory being that you could maintain control of the camp better with the military force, and I guess that's true. And the Forest Service people kept it busy during the day. Well, the camp that I went into it also later, but George went in first. Their summer camp was up in Mirror Lake, and their winter camp was on top of Bountiful Peak. They built some barracks up there, and let's see, there was about 120 enlisted or young men up there under the control of, in most cases, captain who was retired out of the service, and his corps of helpers. Well, anyway, George was there for 2 or 3 years, and I think you were limited. You could only be a certain age. Anyway, he got out, and when he got out, I got in. While he was in there, he became what they call an assistant leader. They made all of $32 a month, and the leaders were the highest paid and the most authoritative of the group, and they made $45 a month.
Times have changed.
Huh?
Times have changed.
Yeah. Well, anyway. So when George came out, he went to work in Tooele. That's where he got a little banking experience. But when he left, he had a relationship with the senior leader in there, and he knew I was coming, and so he told this guy that I'd make a good company clerk, meaning that I had about a year's experience with a typewriter. That's all. Anyway, that's what I became the company clerk, and I was that for about a year and a half. When George left there, he went into the service, and he was a yeoman, which again is a glorified clerk. He worked up to becoming a chief petty officer. And then I don't know what happened. He was in San Francisco. I don't know what happened. I think he had a disagreement with his commanding officer, but I'm not sure. But all of a sudden he ended up on board a destroyer escort heading up towards the Aleutians. Now the only reason I can think for that transition was some kind of a defugality. Anyway, so he was on a destroyer escort called the USS Doherty. And that's where he spent the rest of the service. I stayed in the CCCs for a year and a half, and then they decided to disband the company that I was in and combine it with another company down in southern Utah. Well, I didn't particularly want to go to southern Utah at the time, so I got out and I started college. At that time, the war hadn't started yet. It was you could do just about what you wanted.
How about the other two, Bill?
Bev's gonna get us up and moving with a game, and then we'll come back and ask some more questions. After, we'll do a game, and you can wander around and play or whatever you wanna do, and or participate in the game. Candy is involved in this game, so